But I do think this, and that is that right now in the United States, this has reached a point of such controversy where you have people running for public office being asked to comment about it, school board elections being decided by this one way or another. It's reached a point where we're actually at what a systems analyst guy would call a tipping point. And I honestly think this country is going to go one way or another. And as a scientist and an eternal optimist, I think we're going to go the right way. And the right way is by an increasing embrace of the scientific ways of understanding things, and also of an appreciation that science and religion ultimately can be in harmony. So I'm optimistic that that's how things are going to happen. There are always going to be people who oppose evolution, but I think ultimately this country can come out of the current debate with a better appreciation for the nature of science and a better appreciation of the value of religion. Okay, right here, sorry.
How does the origins of DNA?
The origins of what?
DNA.
Well, it's a very good question. And that is, for quite a long time, people investigating the origin of life have wondered which molecule came first. Some very early experiments done with primitive Earth conditions in the 1950s suggested that amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, form quite easily, spontaneously under primitive Earth conditions. So they wondered if proteins might have come first. But of course, nucleic acids, we now appreciate more than we did in the 1950s, carry the information. There's substantial sentiment within the scientific community that DNA is just sort of an offshoot, and that the first information-carrying molecule actually was RNA. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that RNA has a very, very profound catalytic activity. The director, the president, the CEO of the Hughes Institute, Tom Cech, won the Nobel Prize for the discovery that RNA can catalyze certain chemical reactions. One of the reactions that RNA can catalyze is its own replication. That has led a lot of scientists to speculate that primitive Earth conditions formed some of the first bases which became primitive RNA molecules that were capable of coding information and copying themselves. And once you get a molecule that can self-replicate, that means the conditions for natural selection are satisfied. The origin of DNA is a little more mysterious. And the general sentiment, again, and it's sentiment, not strong evidence in the scientific community, is DNA emerged as a kind of safe repository from sort of the cauldron of engaging in chemical reactions. So the DNA was a sort of a storage or archival form of the genetic information that originally started out in RNA. And in fact, one of the questions that my own freshman students at college ask me all the time is, why couldn't a cell make do with just one kind of nucleic acid? In other words, why doesn't a cell have everything in DNA or everything in RNA? And I think the answer to that, basically, is that RNA is now used as sort of a cheap, disposable copy that can be made from the archival copy, DNA in the eukaryotic cell nucleus, which stays out of the fray, and RNA goes out into the cytoplasm and actually does sort of the business of expressing the genetic information. So that's a long way of saying we don't know for sure, but those are some of the thoughts of people who work on the problem. Okay. In the blue shirt? That'd be you.
Obviously, the evidence shows speciation over time, and then like the evidence that you've shown about mousetraps is that elimination of features doesn't eliminate the usefulness of the components.
Right.
But such as in apes to humans, how does environmental stimuli, how can that be shown to increase the genetic information held in humans, not held in apes, which is, I think I heard about 300 million new DNA codons?
Well, the first thing to appreciate is that we humans as a species did not evolve from apes. We didn't evolve from gorillas or chimpanzees or any species alive today. Rather, we and the great apes share a common ancestor in the past. So often people say, well, I didn't evolve from any monkey. Well, no one ever said you did. What evolution says is that we and monkeys, and for that matter all organisms, share a common ancestor if you go far enough back. Now there is, now that we have the chimpanzee genome and we can analyze it, you say there's a certain amount of genetic information we have that's not in the others. Well, it's not that we have more genetic information. We have about the same in terms of numbers of DNA bases compared to the other great apes. But our information is different. And one of the things that investigators have focused on in the last year, since we've had the chimpanzee genome to compare with ours, and there'll be more focus in the next couple of years when we will get both the gorilla and the orangutan sequence. People are working very hard at these right now. Is we've been able to pinpoint the spots in our own DNA which have been subject to really, really strong natural selection. And one of the interesting things about this, and this is all very preliminary stuff, because the work is just starting to get published, is a lot of these areas of intense natural selection in our DNA concern the development of the nervous system. Now that's really exciting, the brain, among other things. It's really exciting because the most striking thing about our own evolution is that one of our organs increased in size by a factor of 3 in a space of just about 3 million years compared to the other primates. And for some of you in the audience with prurient minds, no, it's not the organ you're thinking of. It's the brain that increased by a factor of 3. How natural selection... I should have been aware of what I'm dealing with in the audience here. The interesting thing is it's been very difficult to understand how natural selection could have favored what is, by all accounts, an explosive increase in the size of the central nervous system in the brain. We now are beginning to understand the individual genes that were subject to natural selection that control the development of the nervous system, and I'm pretty confident that within a few years of comparative genetics, we will understand the forces of natural selection that drove that increase, and I think more importantly, for the study of our own biology, the genes that actually control our own mental development. So I don't have an answer for you, but I think the answer is forthcoming very shortly. Good question. Okay. Right in the corner.
The human genome is getting really close to being done, and some people have been talking about something called the God gene or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you believe in that at all, and do you think it's possible that that could actually exist?
Well, for the strict use of words, I'd say belief plays no role in science. I don't believe in evolution. I don't believe in the Krebs cycle. I don't believe in the eukaryotic cell. I accept those things as the best scientific explanation on the basis of evidence. Belief is for things like theology or baseball or football. You might believe in the Redskins, but I believe in the Red Sox, and see how it turned out this year. But the notion of the God gene has been popularized by a number of writers in neuropsychology. And what they've argued is that natural selection on our species has given us an innate capacity in our brains to accept religious explanations for things. The great Harvard biologist E.O. Wilson argued this almost 30 years ago in his book On Human Nature. And Ed Wilson argued that natural selection produced this sort of theological capacity which gives us an ability to unite, to join with fellow human beings around myth, ritual, and religious explanations for things. And the reason that prevailed is because those organisms that were able to do that were better at raising food, hunting down animals, making war, and raising children, all of which are important civilized traits in one sense or another. Therefore, that's why we have the capacity to believe in religion. Steven Pinker, a very popular writer on evolutionary psychology, has argued that our brain has a God module. And the God module predisposes us to find religious explanations for things satisfying. Therefore, religion is nothing more than an artifact of this gene or this module in our brain. Now, Steve Pinker is someone whom I've talked with about this, and other people have talked. I've talked with other people about it as well. I think that explanation is generally correct, and I say that even though I consider myself a religious person. So how could you do that? Showing that natural selection produced part of our mental capacity, I think, is no different from showing that natural selection produced the rest of our bodies. And if you believe in a creator, if you believe in a supreme being who used natural processes to bring the physical part of our species into existence, why wouldn't that creator have used the same natural processes to bring the mental part of our being into existence, namely the God module? And if I had to answer Steve Pinker, who says, can you go to church on Sunday because you've got the God module and it's taken you over, I'd say, Steve, natural selection, if it produced our ability to form religion, you know what else natural selection also produced? It produced our ability to do science. And it produced our ability to like and accept rational scientific explanations for things. I wouldn't disqualify science by saying that the brain of someone has a science module, and that's why scientific explanations seem sound and reasonable. And I certainly don't think you can disqualify religion by saying natural selection produced a God module that predisposes you to find religious explanations satisfying. But that's a very good question, and you certainly get a trilobite for that. Okay. Right there, yeah.
What is your view on